Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me in one of my very rare interviews. Interviews that are very important to get out. And today I'm very thrilled to have my dear old friend Mark Byford, the bowler hat farmer, joining me to give us an update on all that he's been doing and the splendid work that we need to do for the emergency that seems to be heading our way. Hello, Mark.
Richard, good morning to you, sir. How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling a hell of a lot better. A bit discombobulated because, as people know, I've not been doing interviews for quite some time, and I've had to quickly rejig the studio. So if the quality is not as good as it used to be, I must apologise for that. But it's brilliant to be able to talk to you. And I know that you've been very busy. We haven't been able to meet up in person for some time because you've been busy. Yeah, we've been busy with our land project. So we're going to dig straight into what's going on, because I know that there's so many rumours now coming out, and I think people are really becoming aware that not only are food shortages coming, but we've got to eat real food, and we've got to find out ways of getting that good food to the people that want it.
Yeah, well, I think what's been interesting, Richard, is I didn't realise when we went on the tour last year, and I for one didn't realise what that journey was going to look like when it unfolded.
Yeah,
and it's interesting that a friend of mine rang me the other day, and he said, and he's now got about 100,000 followers on social media, and he said, when you came to see us, he'd got about 500 followers for the farm, and he said, I daren't do a video. He said, you kind of gave me that confidence. And now, like everybody, and a bit like me when I started on this, and you kind of gave me guidance, and it was like, do this, don't say that, all the things we know in do and don't do. But what I think's come out of this in the last year, Richard, is that farmers have found their place. They found their voice to speak out against what's going on. And they're now not only found that voice, they're now doing something about it. So what's great to see is the fact that we have this new emergence of farmers on social media. And Richard, a friend of mine, Greg from Sunshine and Green, he put this to me brilliantly. He said, look, what you got to understand, Mark, he said, if one of the big supermarkets wants to advertise on social media, they pay good money to try and get a message out to an audience. He said, we'll have it for free. We take it for granted. Now, whilst everybody's coming at this food and farming side, all the farmers and growers and producers and everyone who wants to talk about good quality health and food, we all come at it from slightly different angles. So we just drip to the public. And I think it's made a massive difference. And the other day, I had calls from three friends who are all butchers across the country, all to say that their takings are up at 50 to 100% in the last year.
That's amazing.
That's absolutely unbelievable. And on top of that, the Organic Association announced the other day that organic sales for food in the UK have jumped 9% in the past 12 months. Now, that to me says there is a movement. Now, I'd like to think that between all of us, we all had something to do with that, and that'd be great and lovely to know that, last year was worth what we put ourselves through to do it.
Yes.
With the tour. But what has come out of it is we are now starting to see this resurgence of people wanting good quality food. So I think from my side, when we went on the tour last year and started promoting the foodfindershub.org and telling people, look, there is this website we've set up where farmers can advertise, growers, producers free of charge, and the public can go there and use the service free of charge, that gets about 70,000 views a month, people going there to search for things. So that's coming together nicely. We've got over thousands now of farmers and that listed on there. So that's all coming together really well. However, and there is a however to this.
Yes.
I think, Richard, that people have got frustrated, the general public here. We all know what's going on. Most of your viewers are going to know what's going on around the world, right? Let's be fair. And people have got frustrated over the course of the last 6 years, since all this majorly started in 2020, that, but nothing's changing. Well, it is. And I think that what we've seen in the past year is that people are starting to establish what the next step looks like. And it's taken us, and for me, I sat here at 4 o'clock the other morning to get an absolute earful of Gloria, because I was still up at 4 o'clock in the morning, But I've just had all this going around in my head. It's like, how does it all fit together? And then the next morning, after she kind of given me her 2 pence worth, I got up and I was like, that epiphany point, and I was like, oh my God, I now see how it all fits together. So the next step for us, we've just set up on a thing called School, which is a new social media platform, which is out there. We've set up called Field to Feast. And on there, and maybe we can put a link in here, Richard, for people to be able to join that. And the idea is that School is a platform that we can set up without all the noise of most of social media. So it's a group, a community just for people that are interested in better quality food, whether that's growing, producing, cooking, whatever. Set up a community just for that. And I think in 48 hours, 72 hours of launching, we've had about 50 people join it. It's free. People can join it for free and use it. And again, what we're looking for, Richard, is the people that are the balcony gardener, the patio gardener. You know, this might be someone who's got a small holding, someone like yourself who's now taken on a few acres, but don't truly, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to you or anyone else, but don't really have a clue what you're doing.
Exactly.
But you're prepared to just, you're prepared to just dig in.
Yes.
Now, that's what this school is going to be about, Richard. It's going to be about bringing all those people together who want to ask that question where they feel silly asking it, and just going, look, this isn't silly. Someone there has been through exactly the same as you, but they've got the answer. So let's bring all this knowledge to the table now and start actually looking at what the new food system needs to look like, right from the growing right through to selling. So I had a little bit of raw milk there, Richard, I say?
It is a little bit of raw milk, of course, from Charlie's Farm Shop in Bury in West Sussex. If anyone's wants to go there and get genuine grass-fed or raw milk. Can't say it's organic, but it is raw milk, good quality stuff. And it's funny you should say about school and having a place to go and learn, which is something that Julia and I particularly need. Because I've rejigged my studio at the moment, this room is now a chitting haven. I have potatoes sitting behind the camera, you wouldn't believe it. Here's one. We've got King Edward's, we've got Maris Piper, we've got the other one over there, King Edward, Red Duke of York's, and they only arrived the other day, and we've now put them out to chit, so we'll be planting these in about March, second week in March or something, as far as I know. But that's the sort of information that we are desperate to know about. Because, I mean, another example is that Julia bought a nectarine and a peach tree. We put them in the ground, and then a few people were saying, oh, well, they won't survive the frost. And we thought, oh, what should we do? Somebody said put them in a polytunnel, and somebody else said, no, you could put some fleecing material, and apparently there's some zip-up fleecing material for those things. So this is really, really interesting, and it's the kind of thing that we're going to be asking all the time. How do we do this? Where do we get that from? What's the best, this way or that way? So I think what you're doing for people like me with a couple of acres is just going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think what's coming out of all this, Richard, is we're building a new system, and it ain't going to happen overnight. And I think people need to be realistic of where we are. What we've got to make sure is when that time comes for the food system to crash, we all know where we are. And I think that's what's going on at the moment. This year is going to be a huge learning curve for a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that have never grown before are contacting me saying, Mark, I bought a bit of land. You know, what's your thoughts on how to set this up and what to do? And it's like, okay, if we set this school up, you know, and again, we've done it through the CIC, just like we did with the Food Finders Hub. And that's going to allow us to be able to exchange knowledge with people all over. We've had a lady join from Greece in the last couple of days, you know, and she's like, oh, English lady, she's moved out to Greece for a better life. So she said, I'm concerned about this, this, and this. And straight away, someone was there who could answer it. That's what we need to be, Richard, building big communities. Now, whilst I appreciate, like yourself, people who've bought their bit of land and want to be able to go and hide away there, we still need to sit within communities what have the knowledge we need. Yeah. And that's what I think, you know, the online side certainly gives us, and the ability to bring people together, like through your shows, like you've done over the time. You know, if you think, Richard, over the course of the last 5 years, the amount of people that just you must be responsible for have woken up must be phenomenal. And lots of those people are now going, okay, what's the next step? And the next step, okay, I've got the garden ready. I've got an allotment now. I've bought a small piece of land, whatever that might look like. They're now going, okay, how do I now deal with this? So let's make sure that we've got that knowledge on there. So 2 things I want to get out today, Richard. One is telling people about the group, and we can put the link in for that. But the other side is we have the facilities on there, Richard, for people to be able to tell people their story, do little videos about this. They could write ebooks about it that they could, put on there for other people. This is now about the exchange of knowledge. We've now got to the point, we did the tour, we told the people about what's going on. You've done the same. Lots of other people have got the vibration of what needs to happen up. Now we need to come together and do something with all this knowledge what everyone's got. This is going to be mind-blowing this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm very optimistic about this particular year. And are farmers they're on board to advise and help? I mean, just thinking large-scale farmers do things very differently from how you and I would do it in a small allotment or small piece of land, because they're using large machinery and they use artificial fertilizers and they spray, at harvest time. So I'm just wondering whether the farmers are thinking, if they're advising, how they would show small scale people how to do things.
Yeah, I think what we have to understand, Rich, is what the word farmer actually means. Farmer is just someone who produces food at the end of the day. Yeah. And I think that there is farmers of all sorts of scale, and what we need is the farmers that are out there. The people like Greg from Sunshine and Green, for instance, he's a classic example. He's sitting on only 4 acres, but runs a box scheme, and the food he produces there is absolutely unbelievable. There is lots of people out there what are, in my opinion, growers, producers, farmers, that have the ability to share a vast amount of knowledge. And there isn't a question that you could throw at someone like, Greg, or lots of the other, people I know that are out there that couldn't answer a question. And these are people who want to grow organically, chemical-free, quality food. So, and I think it's important because, and no disrespect to the larger farmers, they've still got to transition away from that side of things. But I think there is lots of people out there who are used to growing on that 1 to 5, 10 acres and producing vast amounts of food inside that space. They're the people we want to come to the table now to start sharing that knowledge. And just to be there to answer those basic questions, like the other day, I had a butternut squash. It was massive, which I went to deliver some logs for a lady, and she said, and there was loads of them in the garden. And I said to her, is there any chance that I could pinch a couple of those for seed? She said, yeah, help yourself. Now, Richard, these things were like 2 foot long and it must have been 2 foot round. They were massive.
Wow.
So the seed what come from them is going to be superb. And I've got some here for yourself. So, but, I cut them open, dried all the seeds out. They're all ready to use for this year. Just that simple thing, people might go, oh, I don't know how to do that. But It's so simple, to make a video about something like that and give people the confidence to think, actually, I can take my own seed from my own vegetables. But that comes down to 2 things, and we do have to quantify this, that we do need organic and we do need heritage seeds. People need to be giving thought to that, whether they're seeds that have been handed down through the family, through friends, other farmers, or if that is that you go to someone that sells seeds, make sure they're organic and heritage. They're important things.
Yes, so, I mean, this is something that we've been learning about F1 seeds, which are if I've got this right, they're I always think of like Formula One racing, except that in Formula One racing, cars crash so that you can't use them again. And so it seems to me that F1 seeds are the ones that they grow once, and the seeds are useless from those. I don't know I don't know if it's F2 or F anything else for the seeds that you can grow. But if you've grown your own stuff with those heritage things, as we learnt from Charles Dowding, he has a section of stuff which is growing purely to seed for the next crop.
Yeah, and I think this is what people have got to start to understand if we're going to look after ourselves. And I think one of the things which has come out the last year, Richard, for me, is starting to understand what the word sovereignty actually means, because lots of people talk, oh, I want to be sovereign, I want to do this. For me, sovereign means stepping away from the system where I can, when I can. And because unfortunately, with all the reality in the world, we still need the system. And I don't care what anybody thinks about that. We do still need it. You know, if you get appendicitis, you need a hospital. Simple as, you know, something as simple
we all
as
have
that.
to use bank accounts, don't we, at the moment?
Yeah, at this point. So let's be realistic. So let's look at the bits what we can start doing something about. And that for me is where the power of this lies, because we can pull the system to bits, one step at a time. And for me, you know, food sovereignty has always been a big thing. You know, and then sharing that knowledge with other people. But on from that, Richard, there is also the other side that those of us who have built up social media channels, I think now have almost a duty to our followers to start stepping away from the doom and gloom of what's gone on over the last 5 years and start bringing us into the solution-based part of all this. You know, we all say we're on a journey, whether that's, you know, mythical, whatever it might be. You know, lots of people say I'm on a religious journey, I'm on a quest, I'm on this. Whatever you're on, whatever your journey looks like, this is about us being here in the future and having food to do that for me. So let's make sure we understand what the very basic steps of doing that are. You know, at the end of the day, Richard, if you go into a forest, nobody goes in there to seed new trees. The seeds just naturally fall from the tree to the ground and they germinate. Nature's already got it worked out. Man's the one who's fucked it up, let's be honest. And for us, what we need to do is start looking at nature again and the very basics of what we need to do. Okay, how do I save that seed? How do I keep that seed? How do I now grow that seed? And how do I save the seed the other end again? Well, you know, if I leave 10% of the crop I've grown just for seed, how do I need to then make sure that stays there and I can then take that and harvest that again? And we go back to the beginning. Keep it simple. You know, for someone like yourself who's got that land now, you have got the absolute ability to set up different sections on the farm. So you have one section where you've got just set up purely for seed and just let everything there go to seed. It doesn't matter. No, and then you have your other side where you're producing your food that you might eat and that you might sell, swap, share, you know, donate, whatever that needs to look like to fit in with your, you know, journey of where you're going. Because, Richard, lots of people are on this journey in very different ways. Someone said to me the other day they were surprised that we'd added nearly 500 food banks to our Food Finders Hub. And I said, why? I said, because for me, it's about supplying people with food. How they get that food is, you know, some people might not be financially in a position they can go to afford to even eat, let alone go to a farm shop. So how do we start dealing with this? Well, one of the things, Richard, I think we need to start looking at is that people like you, and I'm not telling you what to do here, but people like you that have now got a piece of ground, more than you're ever going to need to supply yourself with, that's for sure, could start saying, okay, well, maybe I could run a little community project here, or maybe I could grow some food. Because, Richard, I had a time in my life when the kids were young, when I really, really struggled for food and went to the food bank. Everything's tinned, everything's packet. My kids grew up on fresh fruit and veg, and I was like, this doesn't fit into what I want. No, and one of the things I'd like to see over the course of the next year is that we start involving people like yourself who've now got pieces of ground to produce a small plot of that land just to get food they can donate to the local community.
And sorry to interrupt, but it strikes me that you know, when you are growing stuff, you're going to have a surplus, and you can't eat. You know, we've got all these potatoes now. The chances are we've got too many of these potatoes. We can't eat them all at once, and there's going to be a glut, and nobody wants to see food wastage. And so I'm very much aware that while we're trying to be self-sufficient on the farm, we can never be totally self-sufficient because we can't grow everything, and we can't have meat and raw milk and everything else, but we'll do what we can. But there's going to be a surplus, and that surplus I would rather go to somebody, friends, family, or a community, rather than just going, oh, well, you know, we grew too much of such and such. Yeah. And it's obviously going to be a learning curve, but at the same time, where there is a surplus, you know, even if it's just to people who come and help on the growing side, and I mean, and that's just on a sideline. a number of people have said, well, I'd love to do what you're doing, Richard. We can't find a piece of land, we can't afford it, but we'd love to, do a bit of help. And I've said to them, look, when we're set up, we'd be more than happy for people to come in and help. And the rewards, we can't pay you, but the rewards are, we'll, grow some stuff, have a little patch and grow something, but we'll all share what we've got.
Yeah, and I think it's important. And I think, Richard, what this is starting to build is what we're talking about with new communities. And as we develop these new communities, and that, Richard, they are happening all over the country. Not just over this country as well, all over, I see a complete change in how food's going to be produced, delivered. Everything's changing in the food system. And as we develop that strategy and start putting this back together, and more people who might be in your area, for instance, get to know that you're doing what you're doing, then you might say, well, actually, Bob over the road there, who's got 5 acres, he's now got some goats, he's going to produce some nice milk. I wonder if I could swap some potatoes with him. Absolutely. And we're seeing more and more of this all over the country, Richard, of people now that are now coming forward, who have got land that want to do something with it, and the people who haven't got land who want to help on the land. We had 900 people volunteer to help within inside the CIC. Everyone, Richard, without fail, put down their first thing on their list was to go and help on a farm.
Wow.
Out of 900 applications, and I had to stop promoting the fact because we just couldn't find enough farms for all the people. And lots of people say, I haven't had a reply from you. It's like, well, we're working through the backlog, sorry. But It just goes to show the demand what's now out there for this new style of life.
Well, I think this is very interesting because you can look at the food situation as a crisis, or you could look at it as an opportunity, because the food where we are now with the supermarkets and the whole distribution and the putting food into freezers and only banging them out on the shelf, just before they go off, and shipping food from across the world has become stagnant. And now, this is, not only is it an opportunity, but it's very exciting that we can get back to perhaps where we were 150 years ago, where local communities were growing stuff in season locally to those people, and people got involved in the farm or related industries in the farm in small ways. And so I'm really, really excited that we're seeing what the last 100 years has been as a sort of an experiment how not to grow food into
absolutely
how not to do it. And hopefully the farmers who've got backed into big contracts and have bought big machinery will slowly realize that actually over time they could get out of this by separating their farms up and bringing people on. But the fact that everybody, well, not everybody, but a much larger volume of people are becoming aware that organic, healthy food is not only good to eat it and taste nice, but it's also medicine to keep them healthy.
Yeah, one of the things we have found, Richard, is that when we set up the Food Finders Hub, obviously, as you know, it was only ever set up to allow people to advertise the fact that they produce food and other people to know where to find that food. There's a flaw in that system, which I realised as we travelled around the country last year. As great as the system is, and we're changing the system in accordance over the course of the next few weeks. And I put this again, this appeal goes out to everybody who has my details on social media. Contact me about this, because we have all the different categories on there for food, Richard. What we don't have is, in my opinion, 2 key missing things: education and health. So we're adding 3 categories. So we're going to add health, kind of what I'm going to say is health experts, people who are particular in their field, a herbalist, whatever it might be. Then we're going to have a section for health hubs, so for people who are looking for somewhere to go to get treatments and so forth. And we're going to look for all the places across the country, the farms that are offering educational programs for children, especially to learn about farming. So obviously we're doing our online school, but as much as, we want people to get real hands-on experience. Places like Hope Sussex, for instance, they are an absolute golden resource that not enough people know about. So we
Exactly.
want to be able to help and support those as well. So one of the things that we're going to add, in now is the health and education section to the Food Finders Hub, because Richard, food isn't just about what goes in our mouths. We need the knowledge to know what to do with that. That comes from the educational side, and that builds better health. And for those who then, as they start to feel better, go, well, actually, I didn't realise how poorly I felt. Like you and I, we've both had this shoulder issue in the last few months, and where it come from, don't know. What's caused it, don't know. But what I do know is I had to get some sort of resolution for it. So we want to get those people who can give those, hopefully holistic therapies an opportunity to be able to be found as well. So that's a big part of where we're going.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because very often the health of natural remedies is overlooked by a lot of people, because of they still go to the NHS and see their GPs and go on pharmaceuticals. One of the fascinating things of the last 2.5 months, where I've had this strange muscular problem, is I've become, because I refused to go to the GP and go down that line, and thought, right, okay, let's see what the alternative in inverted commas real health practitioners can offer. And I think one of the things that I've learned is, and you've met Fiona up in Scaithness, is that she's not only just growing food, but she's growing lots of herbs, and she knows how to use these herbs and these remedies, such as comfrey, and all these other, and nettles and all these other things, which people think may be just weeds or nice colourful flowers. But actually, we also need to grow plenty of those sort of things, so that the health practitioners can turn them into tinctures and balms and all the other things that they do. And so, because one of the things when you grow food is you're starting to get physical, and with that sudden physicality, ailments, pulling of muscles, aches, pains suddenly come. And I ran into that, which is why I got this, or had this problem. And so there's that sort of learning, take it easy, but when you do have these problems, there are all these amazing alternative remedies that you could be growing the answer on your land in a small plot.
And I think what's relevant, Richard, is we're saying all of this, is those things people think are weeds are not. They're there for a reason on this planet. And I think it's relevant that you talk about, things like comfrey. I mean, comfrey is not only good for us, it's extremely good for the soil. It puts massive amounts of nitrogen into the ground. And if you take the leaves and put them in a bucket of water and leave it to rot down, and then just take the leaves out, the brown sludgy water you've got left, dilute that down. That is the best fertilizer you will ever get. And it costs nothing. If you haven't got comfrey down on your land, it's one of the best investments you'll make. You can buy the seed. It's easy to grow. Like I say, nature grows it everywhere. It's not particularly difficult. And these are the things what people need to know, Richard. And so I kind of think that I did my, when I started the tour, it was about the doom and gloom of where we're going with the food and farming. And now we've come completely full circle, So we've got the Food Finders Hub to talk about food and health once we've finished that. We've got the school for people to start coming on. And the other thing which we ought to mention, Richard, is obviously we've set up a radio station which is in the process of launching. And it's called Food for Thought Radio, fftradio.com. And different points in the day now, we've got different live shows going on. The game plan from our side is to get to the 30th of March and have 24 hours a day covered with live shows, or pre-recorded shows that fit into what we want to talk about. And a bit like your station, especially your channel, Richard, we want to be able to cover everything. It's not, although it's called Food for Thought, it's not about food. Yes, I'm going to do my farming slots on there and growing slots. I've got different farmers that are coming on to talk. I've got another farmer who wants to do a 2-hour show. We've got someone on there talking about all the banking and financial side of things. We've got other people who are coming on to do different shows. This is about now, in my opinion, all the people like yourself that have got a channel starting to come to the table on this radio station. And we have a radio station that's dedicated to two things. One, the truth, because that's fundamentally important.
Absolutely.
And two, that people can actually be part of that station, because we all stick things on YouTube and people can comment, but they can't interact.
Yes.
And what we want to be able to do, we've got a Telegram group set up on the front page of the radio station website, where people can go on, and while they're on the show, they can interact with the the radio station to ask questions and talk about things. And I think where we've come, this is about integrating old style radio station with new style of social media and bringing the two together. And for us now, the next step really is to start getting all of the people that have, an ability like you and I, well, I hope like I, to talk to an audience that, to be able to deliver a good story and get that out to the masses, because the more and more people we wake up, Richard, the more and more people we save whilst we're on this journey. And I don't mean save as in, pulling them out of the mire, but a lot of people don't realise they're in the mire at the moment. And, we need to be able to lift them courageously out of there and say, look, yes, it might look very bad over that side at the moment, but look at all this great stuff we've got going on here. And one of the things, Richard, I want to do with the radio station especially is I want to have positive news from all over the country. So we're going to have one centralized point where people can send all of those videos. And David and Helen down in the West Coast, West Country, they're putting that side of things together to do a positive news section for the channel each day, because that is important. That Tony Blair's been out in the Middle East doing this. Starmer's doing this. I don't give a flying Frederick.
No.
What I'm worried about is, where can I learn about the great stuff, what's going on? Do you know, Richard, we travelled the country last year, like yourself, and we did a lot of shows together last year. And things like the WTF Festival and Sounds Beautiful and different things, which we're going to be at this year, we need to have and use our channels and our radio station to be able to promote those people so that they get double the amount of people at these events. Because what we now need to do is start waking up the masses.
Yes.
And at the same time, offer those masses the solutions of where we need to go next. Because it's all good and well waking people up, Richard, but like you and I know, in the last 5 years, we woke up and then went, oh my God, isn't it bad?
Well, that is one of the problems. You wake people up, they go into shock, and then they don't really do anything, or they don't know what to do, or they think, well, what can I do? I'm just one person and this is too big for me. I think what you just said about the radio, Food for Thought radio, and talking about not just food, because there's so many things that relate to food, as you said about planning your money perhaps to buy certain things and bits of equipment, and what bits of equipment that would be good, and reviews of those sort of things. Or indeed, if a lot of people are sort of thinking about going off grid, or they don't want to be connected to contracts for, say, electricity, somebody like me is fascinated to learn about solar power, how I can, on little areas. Water collection is another thing that I want to know, and then treating that water so you get rid of whatever they're spraying in the skies, because we're still, they're still doing all that sort of nonsense. So that I can see immediately that there is so many relatable subjects to food that on its own you might think, well, what's that got to do with food? But and it gives it such a large bandwidth, if you like, of interest, so that more people will come in, so that your electric specialist who knows all about solar panels or lithium batteries or old-fashioned, whatever the old-fashioned batteries we used to put in the car where we top it up with
acid.
Acid. There's so many people who perhaps hadn't thought about that their skills are connected to food, and yet can, very easily be. And
I think, Richard, what we're starting to see is the interchangeable skills, what we're all having to start to learn. When you were juggling your balls, excuse my French, but while you were juggling your balls a few years ago, you didn't ever think to yourself, well, actually, at some point I might go and buy a piece of land and start growing vegetables. It'd be good to learn that, because it's not in your remit at that point.
No.
But what we're now starting to see is we're all having to learn new skills, new experiences, and be able to develop complete strategies for ourselves. And within communities, lots of people will have those answers, what will save you a vast amount of time. And let's be honest, Richard, I think we are all realistic on this journey to know that this journey for us, whilst it is now starting, the other system is falling down. You know, we are at the point of the collapse of the Roman Empire, effectively, you know, what happened 2,000 years ago. And that's where we are with the Western civilization. So what comes out of that? Well, what comes out of it is what we build. And what we want to build is a better system and a fairer system for the everyday man and woman than what we've been living in for the past 100 years, that's for sure. So I think the experiences and the knowledge that we've all got is about bringing this now out to the forefront.
One of the things that we've learnt, and right from the start I was aware of, is because of our ignorance, we are going to fail on a number of things. You know, we'll succeed and grow things, and then things will fail. And the thing there is that it's not that you really are a failure and that you give up, because when you fail, you learn. If you look at, well, why didn't that grow? Did I plant that too early? Is the soil the wrong acidity? Should it be more the opposite of whatever the acidity is? And you know, I think people can very easily go into it with very high expectations. Yes, I'm going to get a bit of land. Yes, I'm going to grow all these things, and then come into some sort of difficulty, whatever it is. One of our difficulties that we didn't expect really was because of all the rain we've had, there's a track that comes up onto the land, and there's no way I can bring the van on. It's all muddy, it's a mire, and we can't get on it. And you go, oh, I didn't foresee that problem. Is that going to put me off? And it's having that resilience to say, look, things will go wrong because it's in the early days, but don't let that put you off, because there's always a solution, and there are people out there who will help and advise, or even in our case, we have a lovely chap who's a builder, a roofer, and he said, look, I've got this job, big job, I've got all these tiles, old concrete tiles, don't know what to do with them. And he said, I heard you've got a muddy track. Maybe if you take all the nails out, you could use, you know, smash up the concrete tiles, use it as rubble and put it down. I said, that is absolutely brilliant. And I think examples like that on your Food for Thought radio just gives people the reassurance that if they're in a bit of a problem, there are solutions, and not to sort of think, oh, it's all too much all of a sudden and I'm going to give up.
Yeah. I think, Richard, one of the things what's really important for us to understand as well, we've been bred, and I do say bred, over the last 50 years of this country, that we don't ask, we're British.
Yes.
And do you know what? As I was doing a speech yesterday, and one of the things I said on that is, you know, we travelled the country, and just by asking for people's kindness, we were given it. You know, whether that was somewhere to stay, something to eat, you know, take this food with you, here's some cash to keep you going, whatever that looked like. We did the tour on people's kindness, not because that I'm an expert in doing tours. You know, and I think that is one of the key features we all start to realise again, is we are all in this together, Richard, and that people who have the ability to help, like, you know, Fiona in Caithness, the minute she knew you weren't well, bang, she was on it. She was going to talk about, you know, she's right, I need to talk to Richard and send him some stuff and blah, blah, blah. That's the kindness which we got witnessed all over the country. Well, now if we start bringing that to, you know, one area, and we can put this in through the Food Finders Hub, you know, I'm not saying we've got the only solutions out there, but we've got some, you know, the Food Finders Hub, the radio station and the new school. Let's start bringing all this together and all this help together, and we can build a very beautiful community across the country. And I think now we're starting to understand what this could look like. And this was, you know, when all the smoke, you know, Richard, years ago, I had a lovely next door neighbour, what was an elderly guy who was he flew Bomber Command in the Second World War.
Wow.
And he flew the biggest sortie of 500 aeroplanes over Berlin just before the Allied troops got there to basically bomb all the, you know, the barrage points and to be able to bomb Berlin into submission. And I remember talking to him about it one day because he didn't like to talk about it, you know. And one of the things I remember him saying to me, he said, Mark, he said, you know, you're on the right path when the flak starts coming up. And that's where we all are at the minute, Richard. You and I have copped a lot of flack on social media from retards and idiots who just, you know, have nothing better to do with their life, whether they're governmentally approved ones or, you know, paid by someone else, or just people who are just bloody spiteful, right?
Who all, by the way, need to eat.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah, and will go without. And I think once you start to understand, you know, we've witnessed, we are at that point of, Bomber Command is over. If you take this whole thing, what's going on, we are literally over the target at the moment with what's going on. And we are the people who are dropping the bombs. The truth bombs are coming out. It's upsetting the people on the ground because, they're going, oh, no, this is no good. I don't want to believe. And bear in mind, Richard, a lot of people who attack us over time are probably scared of what's coming and don't want to accept it. And that's something which we have to accept. But the big thing for me is that the people out there who do want to buy into what we're discussing and talking about want to help. And that for me has been the big thing with, setting up the Food Finders Hub, especially is, to get 900 people who volunteered. And Rich, I will just say, we've had so many people donate on there. I think last time I was on, we spoke about the fact that we set up a £1 a month scheme where we ask people to donate to what we're doing as the CIC, just £1 a month. If they want to donate more than that, then great. But, we get involved, just donate £1 a month and, be involved in this. That's now got, to the point that's all starting to come through the system and people are making those donations £1. I've got, some people paying £50 a month, but I think what's come out of it, Richard, is that people see there is solutions and want to be there to support those solutions to make sure they're there long term. And that's something, we pay our taxes to the government as much as it, any of us don't like the idea. We pay it. And then all we find is they make decisions what we're not happy with.
Yes, we get nothing back.
If you think to yourself, Richard, think on this as a member of the public, right? If you go to work and you bring home £3,000 a month and you give the government £1,000 of that, what are you physically getting back out of that now? You still got to pay your council tax, get your bins open and everything else, right? And we're saying to people, we have a solution. We want you to help us with £1 a month. And then people say to me, how are you achieving so much? Well, it's easy. We've got people power and we've got these small donations coming in, lots of them. And we don't need vast amounts of money. What we do need is consistent money so that each month we know we can do different projects. Yes, if we had more money, Richard, the big thing I'd like to get into is to be able to donate money to projects like yourself, to someone who says, look, I've got this bit of land, I really need a polytunnel, but I can't afford it. Okay, we can help with that. I really need some chicken tractors to be able to raise my chickens in and move them about on grass. We can help with that. That's where we can take this in the future if we get the right people behind this. Yes, there's opportunities for people to help on the CIC side to help me build and develop all of the strategies behind this. Yes, there's loads of opportunities for people who've got shows like yourself to come on and do on slots on the radio station to be able to push our agenda, because that is, Richard, that is what it is. This is our agenda to fight back against the bullshit. Let's be honest. So there's lots of opportunities in where we are at the moment, I think, for us to build what we actually want to see.
Yes.
And that's something what we haven't been in.
No. And, you talked about positive news. It's very rewarding. It's very rewarding getting your hands into the ground and growing something from scratch and thinking, well, I did that, amazingly. It may not be the perfect tomato plant or whatever it is, but, I think once people give it a go and they start to realize actually they are capable of doing things. They don't have to walk to the supermarket and get everything, even if it's only 10%, 20% of what they manage to do. They've grown themselves. The satisfaction and the reward of doing that. And then if they're able to give surplus away and say to their friends, I've got too many tomatoes, have some, and they go, wow, your tomatoes taste really good.
Absolutely.
So much better than those things straight out the fridge in the supermarkets. So I think the positive, we're not used to expressing positivity, as you said earlier. We're so busy collecting bad news and feeling oppressed. Now it feels like the tide has turned and the positivity of getting out there, growing stuff, and all the related industries or skills, the skill sets that people can get from growing and doing stuff. And of course, one of the things is that we're outside when the sun is shining, getting the vitamin D. We're away from screens. We're working with people again, and there are let's face it, some jobs on the land will be laborious. You've got X many things to put into the ground, but if you're there working with friends, the conversations that you can have will make that work just almost disappear. And people are so isolated now behind, we've been isolated behind the screens, and even to the point, when during lockdown, where people would just order things in, but now we can get back to that community of people, chat amongst each other, and enjoy life in the moment. I just think this is such a brilliant time to be alive.
Absolutely agree. And I think, we've been, you're a classic example, Richard. You spent that 5-year transitioning across from the doom and gloom to the point you go, actually, I don't want to talk about this shit anymore. And there's so many people have got to that point. I was in London yesterday doing a speech at the Advanced UK seminar. They'd got a conference going on, and I was talking to lots of the big YouTubers who were there filming things. And it was interesting to talk to them, and they were all saying, I love the journey you're on, Mark, because we're all starting to realise we all know what the problems are. We can talk about the doom and gloom, but we now need to start looking at what the solutions are. And it was interesting that there was like 10 of them there, and most of them are on that same mindset now, that this is now needs to be about, the opportunities to talk about solutions and what those solutions look like and how we'll deliver them. And, so I think there is some absolutely amazing opportunities ahead, Richard. And I can't emphasize enough to people, yes, we know what's going on. What can we do about that to stop it? Probably very little. What can we do to circumnavigate it? Absolutely millions of things. And those opportunities are now coming to the table, and we're starting to document how to do those things and start looking at, because when you start looking at food, and if we just look at food, Richard, you can say, okay, well, I need to stockpile food, but that runs out.
Yes.
Very quickly,
Yes.
Okay, if we needed to sit this out for 5 years until things have calmed down and, sorted themselves out in the country, what would that need to look like? How much water would I need? How much, and so you're never going to keep that much water. So, okay, how can I get water? Well, Richard, I don't know if you remember, but, when we were kids, you could get a piece of plastic sheet in and just put a bucket one end and just let condensation do its job. It's not difficult to gather water. You can take water literally out of the atmosphere. Seeds, it's not difficult to save seeds. It's not difficult to create compost. You look at all the vast amount of vegetation you've got on your farm, and you've done videos about this. I've seen them in the English Couple, where you're cutting down vast swathes of stinging nettles and grass. That is not waste. It's not weeds. That's food for the future of your, of your vegetable patch.
Yes.
And I think that people have been programmed, again, like I say, over 50 years. Just add some, some gramoxone to that, or some, glyphosate, whatever it is, to get rid of it. No, that's all good quality food. Whether we eat it, the animals eat it, and we eat the animals, or we use it for making manure, or compost to grow vegetables that we eat. Everything's there for a reason, and we've got to start using all of those reasons now for one thing: the future of us and mankind, as I think, as a whole.
Yeah.
Got to start bringing it to the table.
Mark, as ever, brilliant to talk to you. Always very positive and always full of new ideas. I don't know how you get them all. So we'll leave in the description, of course, all those links that you've mentioned before. So do go and have a look at them and peruse them, and don't feel in fear, and don't feel that this is all too much, because everybody can do something, even if they've got a window box or they've got several acres of land. We can all help one another. And as I said before, for me, this isn't a crisis. This is the end of the old system and the beginning of a beautiful new system that we once had, that we've forgotten about. And all those old skills and those old ways of doing things, but implementing some of the new technology and the way that we can communicate. Absolutely fascinating, and so rewarding and optimistic for the future. I think this is really, and you are, of course, a major pioneer in galvanizing people together, and more power to your elbow. Well done, Mark.
Richard, as ever, it's been a total pleasure, my friend. Don't forget, while the sun's shining, make hay.
Yes. Yes, because we need that to feed the animals and all sorts of very good things. Mark, good luck. The links will be in the description, and hopefully we can get together very soon, and I'd love to make a video with you on the land telling me all the areas I've gone wrong and all the things that I can do, which would be fantastic. And then a year later I can bring you back and you can go, wow, you actually did them.
Remember, Richard, it's never that you're doing it wrong, it's just that you're learning a different way to do something.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I don't do interviews very often now because I'm too busy trying to get on the land and actually grow stuff, or at least get the ground in preparation for it. The spring is coming, so it's going to be very busy. But in the meantime, where can people follow you, Mark, you personally?
Well, social media, we've obviously got YouTube, we've got TikTok and Facebook and everything else, all under the Bowler Hat Farmer. And on there, I cover, on each of my social medias, I cover everything what we're doing within the CIC, whether that's the Food Finders Hub, the radio station, or the new school. That's all going to be there available. So, yeah.
So there we go. Check out the Bowler Hat Farmer and you can't go wrong. Until next time, or one of my monologues, I will see you all later. But in the meantime, from Mark, the Bowler Hat Farmer, and myself, thank you for watching. Take care and goodbye.